We will be creating a 2D fighting game in Unreal Engine from a completely blank project. In this video, you'll learn how to set up a 2D character and a local multiplayer system so that we can fight someone else. Just a note, this first part is from a course of how to make a 2D fighting game. If you want the full course, the link will be available in the description of this video, but this first part of the course will teach you how to set up a character and a local multiplayer system. With all that said, let's get started. To get started, you're going to want to open up the Epic Games launcher. If you don't have this, you can download it on Epic Games. Once you've done that, open it up and you should be brought to a page like this. Go to the library section and install the latest version of Unreal Engine. You should be able to click Add New Engine Version here and just download the latest version. Right now it's version 5.1, so that's the version I'm going to be using. Once you've installed Unreal Engine, go over to the marketplace and go to search products and look for Paper ZD. Then if you just click this is a plugin which allows us to animate 2D characters inside of Unreal Engine, and we're going to be using this when we create our fighting game. Just click Install to Engine and install it to the version of Unreal Engine that you're using. I've already installed it to Unreal Engine version 5.1, so it's not giving me the option, but just make sure to do that. Then once you've done that, just click Launch. This will launch Unreal Engine. Once it launches, it should open up the Unreal Project browser. Go over to the game section and you're going to see a bunch of templates which we can start our Unreal project from. We're going to be creating our fighting game from complete scratch, so select the blank template, then go to project name and just call this fighting game. Then click create. This will open up a blank Unreal Engine project. What I want you to do is just go to Edit, then go to Plugins, then here in the Plugins, search and look for Paper ZD, and just make sure that it's checked and enabled. Click Restart Now. This will restart the project, but I'll make sure that the Paper ZD plugin is now enabled in our project. So that's all for this first lecture. I just wanted to set up the project. In the next lecture, we'll begin to set up our player character. Hello! In this next lecture, we're going to set up our first fighting game character. To get started, we're first going to create a simple level, then we'll create some animations for the fighting game character that we're going to use. Before we do all of that though, if you go over to the content drawer, this will basically contain all of the assets and blueprints that we're going to have inside of our Unreal Engine project. When I am creating an Unreal Engine project, what I normally like to do is just go to Window, then Content Browser, and set Content Browser 1. This will just make it so the content browser is permanently here, and it makes it a bit easier to drag in things and just reference things inside of our level. Once you've done this, if you just select the content folder, right click and go create new folder and just call this maps. We're going to create a very simple fighting game level. So to create a new map, we just want to go to File, then go New Level, select Basic, then select Create. This will create a simple level. Then we just want to go and click the save icon, and then it will ask us where we want to save this level to. Just select the maps folder and just call this the fighting map. Then click save. Then we want to select our content folder again, right click, go create new folder and just call this characters. Inside of this folder will contain all of the animations for our fighting game characters. Just head inside here, then briefly close Unreal Engine, and attached in this course I'm going to include a link to some assets. Make sure to download them as we're going to use them to help build our fighting game. Once you've downloaded them, there should be this folder called Monk. This is our first character. If you just select his folder and then move it into this characters folder here, this will import all of the images that we're going to use and will be associated with our Monk character. So if they're not selected for you, you can just hold Shift on your keyboard, then scroll down with your mouse and select the last image, and this will highlight all of the images. By default, when we import an image into Unreal Engine, it's not clear. To make it clear, select all the images, then right click and go Sprite Actions and apply Paper 2D texture settings. This will make the image clear. So what we've done right now is just import all of the animations for our monk. We need to convert these animations into flipbooks so that they play and look correct. So to start off with, we're only going to set up a couple of animations, such as the idle, walking and jumping, just so that we can set up a basic character that can move around and jump. So if you go over to the idle folder, select these images, select all 5 of them, So we can hold shift again and select all 5 of these images, right click, then go sprite actions and go create sprite. Then if you select all of these sprites, right click again, then go create flipbook. This will basically put all the sprites together and play them in a flipbook. So I'm just going to call this monk idle. And if I head inside this flipbook, we can see it's basically playing through all of the sprites that we've combined. And then with Unreal Engine, if you want to, you can change how fast it will flick through all of these sprites. So if I make this something like 1, then it's going to be very, very slow. If I make this something like 60, then it's going to happen very fast. But I'm just going to leave mine at 15. Then we just want to go over to the jump down folder, select all of these images, right click, go sprite actions and create a sprite. And we'll just call this the monk jump down. So I will create a flipbook of these sprites and call this the monk jump down. Then we want to go to the jump up and we're going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to create a sprite, then I will create a flipbook and I'll call this the monk jump up. And then the final one we want to go to is the run. We will select all of these images, right click and create a sprite. Then if we select all of these sprites, right click again, we will create a flipbook and I'll just call this the monk run. So now we have all of the animations for our monk character that we're going to initially set up. The next thing we're going to do is set up an animation blueprint so that we can kind of put all of these animations together, and we'll also create a character blueprint for our monk so that we have a character that we can control. So if we just go to the monk folder, right click, go create new folder and just call this first folder blueprint, and then head inside here, right click and go blueprint class. Then we just want to go to all classes and look for paper ZD. And we want this one, paper ZD character. Because we enabled that paper ZD plugin, it's gonna appear here. It should be paper ZD character. Just go select and just call this the player character BP. Head inside here. And then we just want to go to sprite. And here where it says source flipbook, just select the monk idle flipbook. The monk is going to be a bit small, so what we can do is just scale him up a bit. To do that, just click this anchor icon. This will make it so if I scale the monk up in the x-axis, it will scale it up in all its other axes so it's uniform. So I'm going to make it, let's say, 4. And then I can just select this arrow and move him up a bit so that he fits inside of this capsule. So he's still a bit small, so I'm going to make it 4.5 and then just move him into this capsule. So we can just go compile and close this. The next thing we want to do is just go back to the monk folder, right click and create another new folder and just call this animations. Head inside here and just right click and go paper ZD and select animation source and just call this the monk anim source. So here we're basically gonna store and contain all of the monk's animations. Head inside here and just go add new, select new animation sequence, and for this first one just right click on this and go rename and just call this the monk idle. Then for the flipbook, select the monk idle and just do this for the other 3 flipbooks that we made. So I'm going to do that now. So I'll call the second one monk run and I will select the monk run animation. I will create another one and call this one monk jump up. And I will select the monk jump up. I'll add another one, and quick tip, you can just press F2 with one of these selected and that will allow you to rename it quickly. I'll call this one monk jump down and I will select the monk jump down flipbook. So we're going to reference and use this animation source when we set up an animation blueprint for our monk character. The animation blueprint will basically tell the game which animation our monk should do. To create one, if we just right click, go Paper ZD, and select the Paper ZD animation blueprint. It's going to ask us for an animation source. We just want to search for the animation source that we just made. So I called mine the monk anim source. So I'll just look for that in here and select it. This will allow us to reference all of the animations that we put inside of here. For this animation blueprint, if we just call it the monk animation blueprint, and then head inside here, it's going to take us to this event graph, and there are going to be two nodes, event tick and event on int. Event on tick will basically run every single frame, so if our game is running at 60 frames per second, then it's going to fire this 60 times. Event on int will basically run once when our animation blueprint loads up. So event on int, we want to create a reference to the player character blueprint that we made earlier. So here it is, and this will basically allow us to reference all of the variables and what this player character is doing. To create that reference, we just want to right click and look for get owning actor. This will basically get whatever is using this animation blueprint, and that's going to be our player character. So we can drag off here and look for cast to player character, and make sure to select this one, player character BP, and then connect event on int to here, and just right click on this variable and promote it to a variable. This will allow us to reference this later on inside of our animation blueprint. Next, if we just compile this and go over to the animation graph, there's going to be this output animation node. This basically controls the final animation that our character is going to play. So for now, we're just going to make it so our player character can either be doing their idle animation or their running animation. So to set that up, if we just right click and look for select by ball, select animation by ball, and connect from animation into here. For the thing that determines whether this is true or false, we're going to drag in our player character, get it, then just drag off here and look for get velocity. And we just want to drag off this return value and look for vector length. And we just want to basically check to see if this is greater than 0, and connect this into here. So if our player character is moving at a speed which is greater than 0, then we're going to make it play the running animation. So we can just right click and look for the monk run and connect this into true. If this condition is false, and let's say our player character speed is not greater than 0, then we're going to make them play the idle animation. So we'll right click and look for play monk idle and connect this into here. Then if we just compile this and go over to the player character blueprint, we just want to go over to the animation component, and to make sure that this is using the monk animation blueprint, we just want to go over here where it says paper ZD, and where it says anim instant class, we just want to select the monk animation blueprint. And this will make it so that this is now using the monk animation blueprint. So that is all for this lecture. In the next lecture, we're going to set up some input controls so that we can move and play around as the monk character. Hello, in this next lecture, we're going to add some controls to the game so that we can play as the player character that we set up last time. To get started, go over to the top left corner and go to where it says quickly add things to the project. Click this button and go basic, then select player start. This player start will basically determine where in the world our player character is going to start. We can move where the player starts by playing with these arrows. By default, because we started in a blank project, we're not going to start the game as any character. We need to change some things to make it so we start as the player character that we made earlier. So to do this, we can go to Window, then set World Settings. This will open up the World Settings tab here. It's going to ask us for a game mode. Right now we have no game mode. The game mode is where we decide which player character we're going to start the game as. So we're going to create a new game mode. To do this, just right click in the Blueprint folder, go to Blueprint Class, select Game Mode Base, and just call this the Fighting Game Mode. Then if we double click and open this up, go where it says Default Pawn Class. This basically determines what we start the game as. Just select it, then look for the player character BP that we made earlier. Then just go compile and save and close this. Then just drag this fighting game mode onto the game mode override. Now in this level, it's basically going to use the settings from our fighting game mode. There's just one more thing we need to do. If we open up the player character, go over to components and go add, and look for a spring arm. We're basically going to attach a camera to the spring arm, and this camera is how we're going to view the game from. With the spring arm selected, go over to select and rotate objects, and just rotate it 90 degrees so it's facing the player character. Then select the spring arm and go add, and look for camera, and just attach this camera to the spring arm. Also, just make sure to rotate this camera 90 degrees so it's facing our player character. Then go compile, save, and close this. So now if I click play, I'm going to start my game as my monk character. Although you'll notice, we can't really move or do anything as our monk character, so we need to add some controls to our game. So, to add some controls to our game, just go over to the content folder, right click, and go create new folder, and just call this controls. Here we're going to set up the controls for our game. Head inside this folder, then right click, and go input, and select input action, and just call this move_IA. Then if we head inside this move input action, we just want to change this value type to be an axis 1D. I'll explain how this works later, as it'll be a bit easier to explain and set up. We can close this. Then inside of our controls folder, then if we just right click, go input, and select input mapping context, and just call this fighting input mapping context. Here is basically where we store and register all of the controls in our game. Head inside here, and go add new mapping, and just select the move input action that we just made. In order to make our player character move, I'm going to make it so if they press the A button, they're going to move backwards, and if they press the D button, they're going to move forward. So here, where it has this little keyboard icon, is basically asking us what button we want to make the player character press in order to perform this action. So here, I'm just going to select the A button, so I'll look for A, scroll down and then select it. I'll explain how this works later as it'll be a bit easier, but what we want to do is basically go to add a modifier, and we just want to add the negate modifier. This will just basically make it so it will basically do the reverse. And because I'm going to make it so when the player presses the A button, they're going to move backwards, I want to add this negate modifier. Then we just want to add another control so that we have another button that we can use to do the move input action. So I'll click this, and this time I'm going to look for the D button. So I'll look for D, and then I'll select it. So we can just save this, close this, and the final thing we need to do is just apply it to our player character. So I'm going to go back to my blueprint folder, open up the player character, and go over to the event graph. Here is where we're going to do most of the coding for our fighting game character. Event begin play, what we're going to do is just right click and look for get controller. So we'll get the controller of what is controlling our player character. And from here, we can cast to the player controller. And then this allows us to just drag off here. And if we look for enhanced, this one, get enhanced input local player subsystem. And just connect from event begin play here to here. And then what we're going to do is just drag off here and look for add mapping context. And we just want to select the fighting IMC. And then just drag off here and look for is valid. This will just check to see that we have a reference to a player controller. And if this is valid, then we are going to create the fighting game controls inside of this player character. The next thing we need to do is make it so that when the player presses the input move button, the player character actually moves. So if we just right click and look for the move input action that we made earlier, and we want to select this first one, enhanced action events, and select this move IA. If I just go back to the move IA, earlier I made this value an axis 1D. Because I made it an axis 1D, it basically has this action value. So when I press the A or the D button on my keyboard, this action value is going to have a value of 1. Inside of my fighting IMC context, I made it so when I press the A button, I basically have a modifier which negates this. This negate modifier will make it so that when I press the A button, when I'm pressing the move input action, this action value will be -1. And we can basically use these values to basically make our player character move forwards and backwards. So to do this, we can just drag off triggered and look for add movement input. Under the Y direction, put a value of 1. So the reason we're putting a value of 1 in the x-axis for the world direction is because in 2D games, the player character will move in the x-axis. If I just go here and change this to be select and translate objects, and I just move it, here you're going to basically see its location is moving in the x-axis. So this red little line basically represents the x-axis. And you can see it's negative 160. If I move it forward, then this value will become positive. So that's the reason we're basically adding 1 in the x-axis here. This will make it so our player character will move in the x-axis. I'm just going to change this back to be 0. Then if we go over to the event graph, just drag off here and look for print string and connect this action value into here. Then connect this action value into the scale value. And basically, this will make it so my player character will basically move forwards when I'm pressing the D button, because this action value will be positive. And when I press the A button, it's going to make this value negative, and I'll make it so my player character will move negatively in the x-axis. So we can test this out. I can go compile, save, and close this. And now if I go play, and I press the D button, you can see it's print stringing 1, and my player character is positively moving forwards in the x-axis. When I press the A button, it will print string -1, and my player character will move in a minus direction in the x-axis. So with this, we've added some simple controls to our game. Our player character can move forwards and backwards. Hello! In this next lecture, we're going to make it so our player character can jump. Right now, they can only move forwards or backwards. So let's add that control. The first thing we're going to do is go over to our character's animation folder and open up the monk animation blueprint. Now that we made it so our player character can either run or do that idle animation, we're going to make our animation graph a bit more complicated so that our player character can jump. So to do this, I am just going to move all these nodes, right click here and go break this link. And instead, I'm going to right click and look for new state machine. And just connect this into here and just make sure to copy all of these nodes. Then we can delete them and head inside here. So basically the result of this state machine will basically control the final animation that our character does. Head inside here and just drag off this out and select animation state. Select the state and just call it movement. Head inside here, then just press Ctrl V to paste the nodes that we copied earlier. Then connect this into here. So basically when our player character is in this state, we're going to make them either play their idle or their movement animation. We're going to create a couple more states for when we want our player character to jump. So if I just drag off here and select animation state and just call this jumping up. And just head inside here. When our player character is in the jumping up state, we're just going to right click and look for the monk jump up. And we'll make our player character play the monk jump up animation. We just want to drag off the jumping up state to another state. So we're going to create another state for when we want our player character to be jumping down. So I'll select animation state, select this, and I'll just call this the jumping down. Then I'll connect this from here to here. So in order for my player character to reach the jumping up state, we're going to need to make sure that the player character is jumping. So if I just double click and head inside here, this basically determines what condition has to be true for my player character to transfer from their movement state to their jumping up state. The condition is going to need to be that my player character is in the air. So to do this, we can drag in the player character reference that we made earlier and just get it. Then drag off here and look for is falling and just connect from here into here. So if my player character is falling, we'll allow them to transition from the movement state to the jumping up state. In order for my character to transition from the jumping up state to the jumping down state, if we head inside here, we are just going to drag in our player character reference, get it, and we're just going to drag it here and look for get velocity. And then just drag off this return value and look for break vector 3f. So this will basically allow me to see my character's velocity in the X, Y, and Z axis. If I just go to my player character blueprint and select them, the Z axis is this axis, so the axis of my player character moving up and down. I'm going to go back to my animation blueprint. If my character's velocity in the Z axis is ever less than 0, that basically means my player character is moving down. So if I just drag up here and look for less than, and we just want to leave this at 0, If that is true, then we want our player character to play their jumping down animation. And in order to transfer from the jumping down animation back to the movement animation, if we just head inside here and just drag in our player character, get them, then just drag up here and look for is walking. So we want this one, is walking, and this will just trigger automatically if my player character is walking on the ground. If this is true, we'll allow our player character to transition from jumping down to the movement. Then sometimes, because I found the player character can sometimes be stuck between the jumping up state and the movement state, just drag off jumping up to here, and then head inside here, and for this condition, drag in the player character, get it, and just drag off here and look for is walking. Because sometimes the player character will get stuck where they're jumping up, but then they land back on the ground, and we can only basically transition into this state if the player character's velocity is less than 0 in the z-axis. So that's the reason we've just added this transition state. So we can just compile this. The next thing we need to do is create a new input for when we want our player character to jump. So I'm going to go to my controls folder and just right click and go input, select input action, and let's just call this the jump underscore input action. Then we can open up our fighting input mapping context. We will create a new mapping. This will be for the jump, and I'm going to make it so the player has to press spacebar to jump. So here I'm going to look for spacebar. Then if I just save this, close this, and go back to my blueprint folder, I'll open up the player character, and if I go over to the event graph, I'm just going to delete this print string now that we know what it does. And I'm just going to right click and look for jump. And we want this one, enhanced action events jump. So when I press the jump button, I'm just going to drag off here and look for jump. And this will just make it so my player character jumps. And if I just drag off cancelled, this will basically fire when I stop pressing the spacebar button. I'll look for stop jumping, and this will make it so my player character stops jumping. So let's just test that this all works. If we go compile, close, and go play. If I press the spacebar button, my player character jumps up. We don't really get to see the jumping down animation because I'm not really jumping higher enough, so let's adjust our player character's jumping settings so that you can customize them to your liking. If I just open up my player character again and go over to character movement, go to details, and here if I look for jump, you're going to see jump the z velocity. This determines how high my player character can jump. So if I change this to be 600, my player character is going to jump a lot higher. We can also control how many times the player character can jump. So if I go over to my player character and just select it, we can currently see right now the jump max count is 1. If I change this to be something like 3, that means my player character is going to be able to jump 3 times. We can also change the jump max hold time. So if I make this 1 second, it'll be easier to show you. So if I just close this and I go play, and I press the spacebar button, you can see my player character jumps. If, say, I hold the spacebar button, I can hold it all the way up for 1 second and my player character will continue jumping. So feel free to customize that to your liking. I'm just going to head inside here and make it so I don't have a jump max hold time. Actually, I'll make it 0.5, and I'll make it so my player character can jump twice, and I will just change the jump z velocity to be 500. When I was doing that, I noticed that my player character is not playing their jumping down animation. It plays the jump up animation, but not the jumping down animation. So let me just check what is happening. So I'm going to open up my animation blueprint. Okay, for the jumping down, I never placed an animation. So we just right click and look for monk jump down and connect this into here and go compile, save, and close this. So if I go play, I can jump up, and then when my player character is falling down, I place the jump down animation. I've also noticed my camera is a bit close, so if I just go to my character blueprint folder and select the spring arm, and we can basically change how close the spring arm is. Right now it's really close, so if I make this something like 800, then it's going to be really far away and less zoomed in on my character. I'll compile, save, and close this, and go play, and that looks a bit better because it's not so close. So with this, our player character can jump and move around. Hello! In this lecture, we're going to go over how to create a fighting game camera for our game. Right now, if I go play, we set up a player character, although the camera moves with them, and if I jump, the camera also moves with them. In a traditional fighting game, there's just one fixed camera and the two players fight. So that's what we're going to set up next. To get started creating this system, just go to here where it says quickly add things to the project. Then we just want to look for all classes and just select camera actor. Just move it up and basically find your player start, and you just want to position the camera so it's facing the player start from this angle. So get towards the left of your player start. I'm just going to move my camera roughly there. I'm going to go here where it says select and rotate objects. I just rotate it so it's facing my player start, 90 degrees on. And I'm just going to move it a bit. Then in order to make it so the game will use this camera, what we can do is just go here and go open level blueprint. Event begin play, we're basically going to tell the game to switch so that we're viewing the camera that we've placed in the world. If you just close this and then select the camera active and open up the level blueprint again, right click and go create reference to camera actor. This will allow us to reference the camera actor. Next, if we just right click and look for get player controller, and just drag up here and look for set target, and we want this one, set view target with blend, and just connect this camera actor into here, and from event begin play, so this will fire as soon as our level loads. And what this will do is basically tell the game to switch to this camera actor. So we can test this out. I'm going to go compile, save, and close this. And now if I go play, we are using that camera. So I can move my character, and it's just basically using that camera. Although there are a couple of issues. Right now we can see that it kind of looks weird that these black, it's not fully showing everything. So in order to make it show everything, what we can do is just go here where it says details and just uncheck this constraint aspect ratio. And that will just make it so we can basically see the full camera. There's one more thing I want to do. Right now, my player character's jump is kind of like floaty. So I want it so the player character has more control over their jump. And I'm also just going to move the camera back a bit because I think it's a bit too close. If you open up the player character, go to character movement, and go to details and look for air. And we want this one, air control. Right now it's 0.05, so the player character doesn't really have a lot of control when they're in the air. The higher we make this value to 1, the more control they're going to have when they're in the air. I'm going to make it 0.7. Go compile, save, and close this. And this will just make it so I have more control of my player character when they're in the air. So, yeah, nice. I'm just going to move the camera back slightly more. We can adjust this later on, but I just want to play around with it. So I think this is a fine distance away. And with this, we have set up a fighting game camera. Hello. In this lecture, we're going to make it so our player character can do a simple attack. To get started, if you go over to the character folder and find the monk folder, go to the 1_attack folder and select all the images here, right click and go sprite actions and create a sprite. Then if you select all 6 of these sprites, right click and go create flipbook and just call this monk attack. Next, if we head over to the animation folder and go over to the monk animation source, we just want to go add new, select new animation sequence and just call this monk attack. And for the animation data, just select the monk attack animation that we just made. You may need to zoom out to see it. Then if we just save this, close this, and then head over to our monk animation blueprint and just go to the new state machine. In some free space, you just want to right click and go jump. And this basically allows us to cause our animation blueprint to jump to a specific animation. We're going to use this when we make our character attack. So for the name, just call this attack and then just drag off here and select animation state, select the state and just call it monk attack. Then if we head inside here, just right click and look for the monk attack that we just made and connect this into here. Go back to the new state machine and then we're basically going to force our character when they're attacking to jump to this attack state. Then I'll play the monk attack animation. After we've played the monk attack animation, we want our player character to go back to their normal locomotion. So drag from monk attack to movement And in order to transition from this state to this state, if we head inside here, just right click and look for time remaining. So we want this one, time remaining monk attack. When the time remaining of our monk attack animation is less than 0.1, we will transition back into our normal movement state. So I'll connect from here to here, then go back to my new state machine, compile, save, and close this. Next, if we go to the blueprint folder and open up the player character blueprint, we want to create a button that the player character has to press, and this will trigger them to do their attack. So I just close this, then go to my input folder. Sorry, if I go to my controls folder and just right click and go input and select input action, and let's just call this attack underscore input action. Then if I just open up my fighting IMC, I will add a new mapping for when I want my player character to attack. So I'll select my attack input action that I just made, and I'm going to make it so the player has to press the Z button to attack. So here I'm going to search for Z. I will save this, then go back to my player character blueprint, add in some free space, if I just right click and look for the attack input action that I just made. So here it is. When I press the attack button, what I'm going to do is just drag in my animation component, drag up here, and look for get anim instance. This will allow me to reference the animation blueprint that this character is using. I can then drag off here and look for jump to node, and I can basically tell the game what jump node I want to jump to inside of my animation blueprint. So we called our jump node for the attack. So here under jump name, I'm going to type in attack. Make sure it's spelled correctly, otherwise this won't work. And I'm just going to connect from started into here. So started will just fire once whenever I press the attack button on my keyboard. So we can test this out. If I just go compile, save, and close this, and I go play my game, when I press the Z button, we can see my player character will jump to the attack animation, then it'll transition back to his locomotion. Nice. There's just one thing I want to do. Right now, the player character can spam the attack button. I want to make it so there kind of is a small delay, and the player character can't just spam the attack button. So to do this, if we just go back to our character's blueprint, and just drag off started, and look for do once, we are only going to play our attack animation once, and we're going to wait for the animation to finish playing, and then we'll allow our player character to attack again. So to do that, we can just drag in the sprite. This will get the current animation that we're on, and we just want to drag off here and look for get length, and look for this one, get flipbook length. This will get however long the current flipbook that we're playing. So right now, by default, our character starts in the idle flipbook, but when we switch to the attack one, it will change this to be the attacking flipbook. So we'll get how long that flipbook is. Look for delay. And then after that delay, I will reset my character's attack. So I'll just connect from completed into reset. And this looks a bit kind of weird, so I'm just going to double click, and this will add a reroute node where I can make things look a bit tidier. So I'll just drag this down, and if I go compile, save, and close this, if I go play, if I press the Z button, I basically have to wait for my attack animation to finish playing, and then I can do it again. So this will just prevent spamming. I don't want to have to wait till my animation has finished playing completely, so what I'm going to do is just drag off here, and look for subtract, and I'm going to subtract, let's say 0.25, so I can replay my attack animation 0.25 seconds before it actually finishes. So we can just go compile, save, close this, and with this we have set up a simple attack system. Hello, in this lecture we're going to add an air attack to our player character, so they'll be able to also attack when they're in the air. To get started, if you go to your monk folder and go over to the air attack folder, select all of the images, right click and go sprite actions, and create a sprite. Then select all of these sprites, right click and go create flipbook, and just call this monk air attack. Then if you go to the animation folder and go to the monk animation source, go add new, select new animation sequence, and just call this the monk air attack. For the animation data, if we select the monk air attack, then just go save and close this and open up the monk animation blueprint. We're going to right click, go jump, just select this and call this air attack. And then we just want to drag off here and look for animation state. And we just want to call this the monk air attack. So here under name, I will just call this monk air attack. And if I head inside here, I'm going to right click and look for the monk air attack animation that I just made. I will connect it into here, then go back to my new state machine. So the way this is going to work, when my player character is in the air and they attack, we're going to make them jump to this air attack. Then I'll play my monk air attack animation. After we finish playing this animation, if we just drag from here to the jumping up, and then in order to transition from my monk air attack to my jumping up animation, if we head inside here, just right click and look for time remaining monk air attack, and when the time remaining of this animation is less than 0.1, we will transition to our jumping up animation, because my player character will be in the air when they do their air attack. We can compile and save this, then just go to our blueprint folder and open up the player character. And we just want to select all these nodes and move them forwards a bit. So when my player character presses the attack button, if they're in the air, we're going to make them jump to their air attack. So to check whether they're in the air, if we just drag in the character movement, drag off here L4 is falling. If this is true, that basically means my player character is in the air. So if we just drag off here and look for branch, connect from completed into here, and from false into here. So if we're not in the air, then we'll just do our normal attack. However, if we are in the air, we'll do our air attack. So I am just going to copy all of these nodes and paste them and connect from true into here. Although this time, for the jump name, I called mine the air attack. So here I am going to just call this air attack. And then for the delay, again, I'm just going to connect this into the reset. This is looking a bit messy, so I'm just going to move all these nodes down a bit, so I have a bit more space. And I'm also just going to, let's say, double click here and move this up, and I'll double click here and move this like here. And what I'm going to do is just select all these nodes, press C, and I'll just call this attack system. And I will just show bubble when zoomed. And we can just make it clear that this is our ground attack. So I'm just going to comment all these nodes. We'll call this ground attack. And we can just comment these nodes air attack. Okay, so we can compile, save, and test this out. So if I go play, and I jump, then press Z, my player character does their air attack. I think I may have made my player character's jump a bit too high. So what I'm actually going to do is go to my character movement, go to details, and for the jump velocity, I'll change this back to be 400. And just compile and save that. So now our player character can do a normal, just a normal attack, and they can also do an air attack. Nice. Hello. In this next lecture, we're going to add local multiplayer to our fighting game. That way we can play it with our friends or family members. Now, in Unreal Engine 5, they changed the way that we add local multiplayer. The systems that we could use in Unreal Engine 4 no longer work in Unreal Engine 5. So we're going to have to create our own local multiplayer system. To get started doing that, we just want to go here and click these three little arrows and go Open Level Blueprint. The first thing we're going to do is spawn in a second player character. So if we just drag off here and look for Spawn Actor from Class. For the class, select the player character BP that we just made. And for the transform, this is basically where it's going to spawn the player character. Just drag off here and look for Make Transform. And it's going to ask us the starting location, rotation, and scale of our second player character. But now, if we just close this and select the default player start, and I'm just going to press Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and then I'm just going to rotate them so that they are facing the opposite of the player character. and just take a note of its location and its rotation. So first location is -160, 800, and 110. So just copy and paste these values into the transform here. So I'm just going to do that now. I will copy the Y value, paste it here. I will copy the Z value and paste it here. And we want the Z value for the rotation to just be 180. We can compile, save, and close this, and then just select this player start and delete it. Now if I click play, we can see that there are two characters, my first character and the second character. You'll notice the second character is slightly floating. That's because there's nothing possessing it. In order to quickly fix this, if we just go over to our player character, select the player character of VP self, and just go to clone, and for auto possess AI, just change this to be placed in world or spawned, and that will just make it so it's not floating because something will be possessing this now. Now, if our player character and our second player character pick the same character, it's going to be a bit confusing to tell who's who. So we're going to make our second player character look slightly different. So to do this, open up the player character BP, go to the construction script, and we're going to create a new variable. I just call this is player2. Make it instance editable and expose on spawn. Then just drag it in, and look for get is player2, drag off here and look for branch, and connect this into the construction script. So the way the construction script will work is we'll kind of load it up and fire these nodes before our game starts. And if this is player2 variable is true, then we're just going to drag in the sprite. So the sprite is this part, and we're just going to tint it a different color. So just drag off here and look for set sprite color, and we want this one, set sprite color, connect from true to here, and for the new color, just make it a slight variation, so something like this, slightly yellowy, or you can make it any other color. Then click OK, compile, save, then go to our fighting map blueprint, and just right click on this, and go refresh nodes. Because we made the isPlayer2 variable instant editable and expose on spawn, we can control the value of it when we spawn in a second player character. We just want to check this, go compile, save, and close this. And now I go play. You can see that the second player character is slightly different. Maybe that tint isn't like strong enough, so I'm just going to make it slightly stronger so it's a bit more clear. So something like this. Okay, and I think that's a bit more clear that that is the second player character. So right now, the second player character has no controls, so we're going to give them some controls so that another person can play as them. So to get started, go over to the controls folder, and we just want to right click, go input, and we want input action, and just call this move player to input action. If we just open up the move player to input action, go to value type and change this to be an axis 1D, save this and then close it, and open up the fighting IMC. We're going to make a new mapping for when we want to move player 2. So if I just go to add new action mapping, I'm going to select the move player to input action, and we'll make it so when the player presses either the left or the right arrow keys, we'll move player 2. So for this first one, if we look for left and just select it, then we just want to go to modifiers and go add element and select the negate. If you remember earlier, when we created the movement for our player 1, we added a negate modifier for when the player presses the A button. That way they move in the opposite direction. So we're doing the same thing for player 2. Then we just want to go add a new control binding, and this time we will look for the right button, and we'll make it so when we press the right button, we'll move player 2 towards the right. If we just save and close this, open up the player character blueprint, go over to the event graph, and if you remember, like I said, we're going to be coding player 2 in a slightly different way. So we're basically going to be controlling player 2 from within player 1. So to create this system, to get started, just right click and look for add custom event, and just call this move player 2. We just want to go add new input, and just call this axis value. And for the variable type, change this to be a float. Just drag up here and look for add movement input and connect axis value into scale value. And for the world direction, put a value of 1. And this will allow it so when we call this custom event, we can move player 2 in the x-axis. Next, in some free space, just right click again and go move player 2. Just look for that. And we want to select the move player 2 input action. So whenever we press the left or the right mouse button, we are basically going to trigger this. And we're going to be triggering it inside of our first person character. So what we're going to do is just drag off here and look for is valid. And we just want this one. And what we're going to be checking to see is if player 2 is valid. So just create a new variable and call it player 2. For the variable type, look for player character and we want the player character blueprint and set object reference. Just drag this in and get it and connect it into here. By default, when this first fires, player 2 is not going to be valid. So we need to make them valid. So to do that, we just want to right click and look for get player colon and change this player index to be 1. So if I just go to my fighting game map, event we can play, we basically get the player controller or player index 0. That is player 1. Player 2 is going to have a player index of 1. I actually never created the player 2 inside of here. So to do that, what we want to do is just drag off here and look for create local player. And for the controller ID, just put 1. This will create a player 2 with the index 1. We also just want to right click on this and promote it to a variable and call player 2. And just connect this into here and this into here. Then we just want to drag in our player 2 reference. Drag off here and look for possess. And we want this one, possess us, and connect from pawn into here. And from here into here. This will make it so we will create another player, which will be player 2, and they will possess this player character. If we just head back to our player character blueprint, when we press the left or the right mouse button and this is not valid, what we're going to do is get player 2, drag off here and look for cast to player character blueprint, connect this into here, and then if we just drag in the player 2 reference, set it, and connect this into here, and this will make the player 2 reference valid. Then we can just drag off here and call the new player 2 custom event that we made earlier. And where we're going to move it, we just want to drag the axis value and connect to here. I'm just going to double click to make a reroute node to make it a bit tidier. And then if we press the left or the right mouse button again, this will now be valid. So we can just drag up here and call the move player 2 and connect from the axis value into here. So I'm just going to comment this node, move player 2. And I'll show you a roll, and I'll show the bubble when zoomed. We can go compile, save, and close this. And now if I was to go play it, okay, so because I created another player, it kind of has split the screen. So we just need to actually fix that. If I go edit and go product settings, and we just want to go and look for, what's it called? Player. Oh, here it is. So here it is. Use split screen. Just leave this as unchecked. And we want to close this. Go save. And now if I go play, we can see. And now if I go play, okay, I can see it's spawning in 2 characters. And I actually can't move my player 2. It seems moving the left or the right arrow key controls both player 1 and player 2. But we will fix these issues in the next lecture. Hello, in this video, we're going to fix the issues that we didn't finish last time. So if I go play, we can see currently it's actually spawning in another character and I can't actually move my player 2. When I move my player 2, it moves player 1. So the reason that is happening is because if I open up my player character blueprint, go over to the move player 2 input action, and basically when our player 2 is valid, we just need to make sure that we connect from here into target. That way we're actually moving our player 2. Because I didn't connect this, it was actually moving player 1.
So we can just go compile, save, and also just make sure it's the same here. Otherwise, it won't know what player 2 is. So we can just close this and go play. And that way you should be able to move player 2 and player 1. But you'll notice there is this third character, which is just standing there, which we can't control. So we need to fix that. The reason that is happening is because if you remember earlier, if we go over to our world settings, we made this fighting game mode. And in our fighting game mode, we spawn in the player character blueprint. And basically, because we have created another player, so over here, when we create another local player, this creates another basically player character. So it's spawning in 2 player characters. So what we're going to actually do is change the game mode, and instead we're just going to spawn in a player character for player 1, and we'll make them possess that, and a player character for player 2, and we'll make them possess that. So if I go over to my fighting game mode, open it up, and for default pool boss, just make it nothing. That way it's not spawning in a character. We can compile and save it. Then just go over to the level blueprint. And basically, I'm just going to set these nodes here. And after we tell the game that we want to use this camera actor as our main camera, what we're going to do is just drag off here and look for spawn actor for the class. The actor we're going to spawn is going to be the player character that we made earlier, so the player character blueprint. Where we're going to spawn them, just drag off here and look for make transform. And we can basically copy the Y value here, so 800. We can copy the Z value here, so 110. And for the rotation, just make sure it's left at 0. We don't need to change that. And for the location in the X, let's just copy the one we have here. So that I go to details, it is -630. So I'll copy this, and I will paste this here, and then it'll spawn in my player character 1 at that position. Then we just need to make sure that we can possess them. So if I just right click and look for get player controller, and if I just drag off here and look for possess, and what we're going to be possessing is going to be this player character that we're spawning in here. So I'll connect from return value to here, and this into here. So because of Unreal Engine's new input system, actually I'll just show you. So if I just connect this into here, and go compile, save, close this, and go play. If I click play, I'm not actually going to be able to control either character, and that is because if I just go to my player character blueprint, here on event begin play, we basically cast to the controller of the player, and then we tell it to use the enhanced input system. Because we are spawning in our player character, it's not doing this. So what we need to do is just go over to our player character, and just right click here and look for add custom event, and call it load controls, and connect this into here. Then go back to the fighting map, and after we possess our player character, we just want to drag off the return value and call the load controls, and then we'll be able to control both player characters. So if I just go compile, save, and close this, then go play, we should have a player 1 and a player 2. Okay, it seems like I'm using my player 1's camera there, so I'm just gonna go open level blueprint, and then I'll just set this after I possess my player character. That way we use the camera 1, because we don't want to use the player character's camera. So I'll just do this here and that here. Go compile, save, close this, and now when I go play, we can see it's just using the camera that we set in the level. I can control player 1, and of course I can control player 2. Hello, in this next lecture, we're going to make it so player 2 can jump and attack. To get started, open up the player character blueprint, and go over to the Move Player 2 section. You may need to expand it a bit, and in some free space, right click and look for Up. We'll make it so when the player 2 presses the Up key, we will make them jump. So if I just find it, when this is pressed, just drag up here and look for Is Valid. And for the input object, if we drag in player 2, get it and connect it into here. So initially this is not going to be valid. So I'm just going to copy the nodes here and just paste them here. And then if we go over to our player one jump section, so here, just right click and look for add custom event and just call it player two jump. And just connect it into here. And then when we press the up button, we are going to just drag off here and call the player to jump. We can just copy this, paste it, and connect from here to here, and from the player to the target here. I'm just going to expand this down a bit. We're going to create a very similar system for when we want the player to attack. So I'm going to right click and look for down. I'll make it so when the player presses the down arrow key, they will attack. So if I just find it, here it is. I can actually just copy all these nodes and paste them. Connect from down into here. Then if I just scroll out and find my attack system, so here it is. I am just going to right click and look for add custom event and call player to attack. And just connect this into here. And then we just want to delete this and delete that. And drag off here and call the player to attack. Copy this, paste it, and connect from player two into target here, and from is valid into here. And now I go compile, save, and close this. If I go play, when I press the up button, my player two will jump. If I press the down button, they will attack. By the way, I realized I kind of don't like the floatiness of my jump. So if we go to the player character, select the player character itself. Personally, for me, I am going to remove this jump max hold time. I'm just going to make it 0 as I don't like it. And if we just go play, I kind of just prefer the jump of that. One more thing, we just need to change a setting in player character 1 because they can jump much higher and further than player character 2. If we just open up their blueprint and go over to the jump section, just remove from triggered because triggered will basically continue firing for as long as we are holding the spacebar key, and player 2 doesn't have access to this, so just connect from started into here. Then if we just go compile, save, close this, and play, player 1 and player 2 should have equal jumping.
So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.